Okay, and everything looks pretty good. All right, so we're back, and we have a pretty fun topic we're going to do today. I do have a disclaimer that I am expecting a package, and I have a feeling I have to sign for it, so as soon as I started, I had a feeling that they'll come, and I'm going to have to put this on pause, so just be aware of that could happen, and I'm going to have to take a little intermission in the middle of this. We're going to talk about pressure today, and the difference between feeling pressure and applying pressure, and how that changes as we go. Because pressure is one of the biggest ways you kind of keep getting pushed into human consciousness. Pressure is one of the ways that we continue to stay in the box, right? The external things will force us. It will feel the pressure to stay. We'll feel the pressure to stay. We'll feel all that pressure from outside. We're almost a victim to the pressure. So anyone who is, feeling the pressure, and you hear that all the time. I used to hear that so much. I still hear it a lot, but I don't associate so much into the circles I used to as far as just being out and about all the time. As much as I used to be anyway. Everyone's feeling the pressure. I remember I used to feel that pressure, and you're feeling the pressure to conform. You're feeling the pressure to stay, stay in your environment, stay within your belief systems, all kind of in that human consciousness, in that human box. And it takes a lot to move aside of that. We almost kind of crack under the pressure, which is what begins to happen. Everyone will have, I made a video the other day, we talked about jump point. Everyone has a certain jump point when it's time for them to leave human consciousness. Whether they want to leave or not, it's a jump point. It's something that happens and we get pushed the other way. It's time for us to go the other way. It's time for us to move forward. It's time for us to move on. So when we get to our jump point, we almost start to crack under the pressure of staying there. It becomes too much because we have all that pressure we put on ourselves to conform, right? And when we have all the pressure that keeps building and building and building, and we talk a lot about how we kind of wall ourselves in, we will start to wall ourselves into realities, and all of a sudden realities that we thought we wanted, we have to continue to, I'm trying to think of the word I want to use here, we have to continue to, God, I cannot think of what I want to say here. We have to continue to mold it. We have to continue to upgrade it. Maybe that's what I want to say. We have to continue to upgrade it. So there's more pressure to do that. We have to have the nicer car. We have to get the bigger house. We have to get the nicer job. We can't stay in that same reality we thought we were going to be happy with because we have all that pressure to keep going, because we have the societal pressure to keep going. If you see anyone that's been doing the same job in the same house, had the same car for so many years, all of a sudden there's a human judgment on that. No, you have to keep going. You have to keep moving up and up and up and up. What the human realities are going to say is up and up and up and up, but they're really not. But that's what our human realities will say. You have to keep going. You have to keep being more successful in that human capacity of what we would judge as successful and what a human would say that was successful. Where all that stuff starts to get blown out of the water. But when we talk about we're feeling all that pressure to do that, so we have pressure coming from a lot of different places. We have it coming from external, but the twist to that is nothing is ever really external. We talk a lot on this channel about it's in a pressure that if everything we look at is a simulation, right? And everything we look at is not really real. We're creating it with our mind. If we take our mind off of it, the whole thing will dissolve around us. And it's kind of like, I made this comment in a video the other day, it's kind of like the video game where stuff far out in the game is kind of not as clear because it's not in your point of view, so they're not going to take a lot of money to make this crystal clear until you get in that part of the game where you're in that area of the game, then it's going to be clearer. It's kind of the same type of thing. Energetically it's there, but it's forming, right? But until we get there, it really doesn't fully form. So when we walk into a reality and we look at this reality, it's kind of what we think it's going to be. It's our belief system of what it's going to be, and that's how it forms around us. It's a tricky little thing. It's a tricky little thing that happens, how that works. So, we feel the pressure from what we put on ourselves, right? And that just gets mirrored in the outside pressure, but it's still pressure we're doing to stay in that we can't feel the pressure if we are not under that pressure, if we are not the ones that in a sense are applying the pressure, but in a different way. We are, in a sense, our higher aspects are applying the pressure for us to eventually crack. That's what happens. That's why we feel the pressure. We're feeling the pressure because our higher aspects, our universe, is trying to crack us, right? Because as soon as it cracks us, we start to get out. We kind of crawl out from under all of the center blocks that fell on top of us. Everything that eventually will explode and fall on top of us, because those realities can't last. And any reality you've closed out, whether you did it on purpose or you just did it by not throwing any more attention to it, whether that be, I was talking to someone and thought I ghosted someone, and eventually the whole reality just went away because I just removed myself from it. Because we stop paying attention to it, everything goes away, and eventually it just dissolves, right? But we always have this built up in our head that's going to take us so much to get out of this reality. I can't get out of this reality. I'm so important to it. I can't possibly leave. The whole thing will crumble if I'm not there, if I'm not in this job, if I'm not in this friend group, if I'm not doing all this stuff. The whole thing won't survive without me. If I'm not volunteering at this organization, they can't make it. I've seen so many people have that overvalued self. It's not really self-worth. It's almost this overvalued self-importance that human aspect has, that if we're not in this thing, the whole thing falls apart. And the funny part about that is when we start getting out of these realities because they're not aligned anymore, we've kind of gotten to our jump point, things have started to collapse, we don't want to be in a lot of this stuff anymore, and we start getting out, whether we're forced out, whether we, some realities we're forced out, some realities we just walk away, leave the keys in the door, and we don't even care about it anymore. Every reality you have is going to be phased out a little differently depending on what it meant to you, depending on the underlying program of why you were in it. The underlying program on why you were in it, all those realities will end a very similar way because the program is the same. The underlying program of, self-worth, the underlying program of not being good enough, whatever the program is. Those realities to me tended to end the same way because the energetics were all kind of the same. So the ending was kind of the same. Maybe a slight tweak here or there, but it was still very, very similar. So as we go through these realities, we start exiting a lot of these realities, we start to find that the minute we stop giving them attention, they fade away pretty quickly. What we thought was so important for us to be somewhere, all of a sudden, it's not that important, we're there. Things move on. And the only reason they don't is because we try to hold on and continue keeping ourselves there. I've seen a lot of people, and I did something very similar when I was finally leaving my more linear job, like walking away from those jobs and getting completely into doing work for humanity in this sense, consciousness work, and leaving the other stuff behind, all the human-based jobs I had. Even though every job we have, there's a reason we have it, and we'll use those skills later on in our higher consciousness work we're going to do. But when I was in those jobs, we have a feeling we kind of want to phase out of them. We don't want to just leave. We'll be like, I can be a consultant for a while. I see so many people pull that card, and I pulled that card too. Because we're so afraid of not having the money. It has nothing to do with really wanting to stay there or wanting to be a consultant there. We don't want to do that. We just want to still have a little bit of the money there to have a little bit of that safety blanket there. So, and we spin this, and our human consciousness spins this as they can't live without us. This reality can't go without me. I'm going to have to phase out gradually. Where if we just left, it would be fine. But we're the ones that don't want to leave. So we're the ones that kind of hold on to it. We're the ones that keep feeling the pressure. We keep making ourselves feel that. But we're the ones doing it. So once we exit out of our human consciousness and we start living from a higher consciousness, our higher aspects, we are then applying the pressure. We are no longer feeling the pressure. We've now flipped. Whereas before we're in our human consciousness, We're feeling pressure, but that pressure is being applied by us, right? It's getting mirrored back to us from the outside world of the constrictions we're living in. But we're the ones that are actually applying it. Our higher aspects are applying it. As a group, our universe is applying that pressure. So we crack, so we leave. It's always us doing it. We just paint it as something else. But if we had pressure on ourselves to conform to anything, we would have no pressure to feel. But we're the ones that are applying that pressure. It's almost like all those movies when you're like, oh, who was doing all this behind them? It was always the character that's like, who's doing all this? It was me from the future. Harry Potter did that in Prisoner of Azkaban. They kind of played with that storyline. It's me. I think Tenet did it, though I didn't see Tenet, but from what I heard, they did something similar, where it's like, oh, it's me from the future. I was doing all this stuff. I was helping me out. I was pushing me this way. I was pushing me that way. I was trying to get me going that direction. That's what happens. It's so subtle, and because our human consciousness does not have the capacity to consciously read the energetic field, unconsciously it's getting the information, but not consciously. So it can't see it like we can when we get into always living from our higher consciousness knowledge. We have our higher heart, then we have the higher mind consciousness that opens, and we stop linearly trying to think about stuff. We don't even try to do that anymore. We don't sit there and go, let me try to literally think about this. Let me really think about what I'm supposed to do here. We stop doing that. It's like, how do I feel about something? How do I feel about this? What does this feel like to me? Does this feel like something I want to do? And we start applying the pressure. Not only are we now applying pressure to ourselves, but it's a different way. We're applying the pressure to ourselves to live from that higher aspect, but we don't feel the pressure the same way. So this is going to sound like I'm going in a circle. So I'm going to try to put a little bit of examples around it. We apply the pressure for us to get up and get stuff done, but it's not the kind of pressure that is from a lack. I'm trying to fill a hole by doing all this stuff. It's a kind of pressure of, it's a creation excitement where I feel like, oh, now I got to do this today. Today I want to do this today. I really want to get, I want to really get back into painting today. I feel that, what I used to call is I feel the push, I feel the push to do this. I feel the push to want to get this done. But it's an internal push. And because it's not coming from outside, it's felt differently. It's kind of like you just know what you have to do. And not only do we apply that pressure to ourselves, but because we're doing what we're supposed to do, it's not that harsh push. It's just like a nudge, like, oh, I'm going to do this today. So it doesn't have the same cadence to it. It doesn't have that sharp edge to it that happens when we, do something a different way, or when we are feeling that pressure from the human sense of feeling it. And we also start to apply pressure to others as their higher aspects, applying pressure to them to step up, applying pressure to them, but only when they're in our reality. And this is kind of, I'll see this a lot where people will say, oh, I'm pushing them to do this, or I'm pulling them along. We don't do that. That's all human consciousness. That's all ego. If you're trying to pull somebody along, you're trying to make somebody crack, that is all from our human ego of wanting them to be where we are, wanting them to come along on the ride we're on, wanting them to be at the same jump point we're on, where their jump point might be 10 years from now, or 2 months from now, or 10 minutes from now. It doesn't matter. But we do apply pressure to people in our reality that want to be in our reality and are agreeing to do this with us. We apply pressure to be as acting as their higher self in that moment. We are, in a sense, now become the higher aspect they look up to. I mean, a lot of the videos I put out, I'm technically applying pressure to anyone watching them, because they're going to watch them and look and go, maybe I should be doing that. Maybe that's what's going on here. It expands the mind. It gives you something else to look at. It's not just the same old reason why something happens. It gives you that higher consciousness look at, maybe that's why this is happening. Maybe it's not the reason I thought was happening. So that's really what anyone working in consciousness is, first job is really to do, is to apply pressure. Apply pressure to start to get people to crack, but not in the same way that their own universe will get them to crack. We act as a surrogate for them, in a sense, for a long time, will act as a surrogate to get them to want to be in that reality, they'll want to come along with us for a while. But a lot of people, which I have found, they kind of have an interest in it, but if it's not their time, their interest will wane when it starts to really interfere with the world that they have built. And that nothing we built was aligned in our human consciousness, so it all has to go. Your whole reality has to flip upside down. If it hasn't flipped upside down yet, then you're just not at that stage for it to flip, or you're resisting the flip, because your human reality and your soul aligned realities are not going to look the same way. They're not built on the same systems. You're not going to end up in the same place. You're not going to live in the same place. You're not going to have the same people around you. It just doesn't work that way. It just isn't supposed to work that way. So we start being the one that puts the pressure on, but from a place of love and from a place of purity, not to crack a person. And that doesn't mean that you meet someone, like anyone I have a small interaction with, I might say stuff if it feels right to kind of stretch their mind a little bit, but I'm not going to tear down anybody's world. I'm not going to try to destroy everything they think. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I'm seeing these people for 2 hours. That's not my role there. But if someone who's agreed to be in your life and you've agreed to be in their life and you have a partnership with them, then if you're in your ascension process and you have achieved higher consciousness and you are acting from those aspects, you are to apply pressure to other people to live up to what they can live up to come from their higher aspect. And if they cannot, you apply the pressure to get them there, because that's the agreement you have with that person. The minute that person wants to end that agreement because they don't want to go there anymore, then that agreement can end. The reality can close out and everyone can go their separate ways. But I see a lot of people that try to coddle people in their reality because they don't want them to leave their reality. They don't want to apply the pressure necessary to get them to the next step. When, if they're in your reality, and I mean in your reality, like not someone that's kind of casually there every once in a while, someone that is in your reality on the daily basis, you want to apply the pressure for them to live to their highest. But a lot of people don't want to do that because they know when they do that, this person's not going to want to stay for them. They just know that, but they don't want to let that person go yet. They want to keep, because they have they're married to the person. It's a good example. I see this a lot with couples that that are married because they don't want to let each other go. But our soul doesn't give a shit about a marriage contract. Doesn't care. That's a human contract. Our soul doesn't care about that. Our soul will rip those relationships to shreds in a sense because they might not be highest aligned going forward for what one person in that partnership has to do. It doesn't mean they might not be able to, the other person might go with them, but these are agreements that are made. These are not, I have to stay with this person and bring them along because we were married before I went through my ascension process and now they have to come with me. Because I feel like they have to come with me because I don't know another way. I don't know what to do with them. What am I supposed to do? I was married to them, or I am married to them. So you see a lot of relationships start to end when people start going through different parts of their ascension process. You see a lot of relationships start to break down in the middle of that process. The ones to me that are not breaking down are the ones that people are kind of holding on to. Because having the open, honest discussion about where everyone's going to be at and the consciousness everyone's going to come from and applying that pressure, the other person is going to really start to feel that pressure. And if they're living from a human consciousness and you're living from a higher consciousness aspect, the two can only go for so long. The vibrational frequency is too different. It is way too different to keep everyone together. It won't work. It can't work forever unless the other person is willing to step up. Now, that doesn't mean we don't love them. That doesn't mean we won't be there for them. But the capacity, the relationship will have to change. Because if we're also always the one that's applying the pressure, and we see no movement, and this person is still in their human consciousness, so they're still doing the same shit all the time, they're not really ready because it's not their time yet. It's not that they're trying to buck us in a sense. In a way, they are trying to buck us because it's not their time yet. We're trying to act as a surrogate, and we can for a while, but their universe also knows what it's doing. And if if their universe is overriding them to keep them in certain situations, because they're going to need the whole thing to fall apart before they're going to go through their awakening, we have to respect that. So we can be a surrogate, but only for so long. It's not something where we will always act as their universe or their higher aspect, because they have a higher aspect. They have multiple higher aspects. They have a zillion higher aspects, just like we do. So we have to be very careful when we get into that capacity to apply pressure to other people in our reality, and when it's appropriate and when it is overstepping, when we're energetically overstepping because we want something out of it. We're no longer acting for their best interest. We're no longer acting from purity. We're acting from selfishness. We've now gone back into our human aspect, where we're no longer capable and no longer, what's the word I want to put in here? We're just no longer doing it for what's good for them. We're trying to do what's good for us. What's good for me is not having to go through that divorce. What's good for me is not having to leave this job. What's good for me is not wanting to sell this house. What's good for me? We've now flipped back because we don't want to have to let these realities go. And then we flip back into feeling the pressure again, because if we go back into our human aspect, now our higher aspects will start applying the pressure back to us again to do what we need to do to move forward. So you're going to start out in feeling the pressure. You can go to applying the pressure. You can then flip back into feeling the pressure again, because we will oscillate in and out for a long time. You can be in your human aspect, you can get to your higher aspects, you can start to rearrange your world. That's why people talk about the fifth dimension like it's the last dimension, it's the heavenly dimension. It's just the beginning. It's just the gateway. It's just really feeling the frequencies of heaven. It's seeing the colors and feeling what joy feels like and peacefulness, but not holding it. You're just feeling it here and there. But you want more of it. But it's not boots on the ground, sixth dimension, having to rearrange anything, seventh dimension, eighth dimension, ninth dimension. You're just not doing anything yet. So when I see people in those realities and everyone's talking about, oh my God, everyone's around me is opening up, and everyone around me is this and this and this, and we're all going to go through this together. I see that, but deep down I know that you're not going through this together with all these people. One, we can't become our own universe and sovereignty if we get 100 people huddled up around us. It doesn't work like that. Humans want to huddle up together all the time because they don't want to be alone. Even people who say they want to be alone don't really want to be alone. They want to stay all huddled up together. And that's what our human consciousness has told us to do. It's in our human DNA. It's we don't want to be picked off by an animal, so we have to all stay in a community together. It's the survival mode of being together. But because we have gotten to a certain place with our consciousness, gotten to certain dimensions with our consciousness, we start to feel like we can just bring everybody with us. We can put everybody on our back and carry everybody with us. And you're going to find the journey is so intense, just dealing with our own stuff. Being able to assist anybody comes way later. Really assist. Now, it doesn't mean you cannot help someone expand their mind, expand their consciousness, but really helping someone rearrange the reality, holding someone accountable to be in their higher aspect all the time. And that's a little bit of a misnomer, but when they go into the human aspect, calling them out on it and getting them back into their heart, getting them back into their higher aspects, these are not things you really can do from the fifth dimensional consciousness, because you haven't had to do it yet. And if you haven't had to do it yet, you can't tell somebody else how to do it. And that goes into the authenticity of the ascension process. That's why different people are going to be drawn to certain people in their process, because they're in that process. Or usually you're going to be drawn to people that are ahead of you in the process because they're teeing you up for what's coming. And the people that are where you are will start to be a little boring for you because you're actually in that now, and there's nothing new going on in that conversation because you're living that now. So that's why we kind of phase in and out of what we can listen to and who we can listen to. And different videos or different podcasts or different things that activated us before don't activate us anymore. Now they kind of just don't feel like anything. It doesn't matter. Certain people that used to be activations for us. Twin flames were a huge activation. And that's why they're in our life, to activate us forward. They're a huge activation for us to clear our stuff. they're inspiring for us. They get us going, they get our blood pumping. But as soon as we have kind of maxed out that relationship and it can't go any farther, all of a sudden it's not inspiring anymore. It's boring. It's frustrating. I know the last one I dealt with, the last twin flame I had, it just got to where it was boring. It's not going anywhere. We can't get to the next phase because we all want to stay and go around the barn 5 times over the same stuff we've been doing for years. So eventually all these realities have to move, and you're either going to be feeling the pressure, you're going to be applying the pressure, you're going to flip back and forth. But if you are feeling any pressure at all, know you're in your human aspect. And sometimes just knowing that can break us back out of it again. It can kind of get us to go forward in a different way. It can get us to move forward. It can kind of shake us up and go, yeah, wait, yeah, I am still kind of, I've gone backwards a little bit. And we really can't go backwards. We just go more into our programming. We go deeper in to clean more stuff out. We get to the part where it feels like we don't want to let that go. And our universe is saying, well, you have to let that go. It doesn't mean it has to go away. We just have to release having to have it. And there's a lot of misconception on that. You'll see like, oh, you have to let everything go. We have to not need it. If you still need it, you think it's the most important thing in the world, I can't live without it, I will guarantee you it won't be there. Your universe will take it away. Because it has to show you you don't have to have it. You know, having to have it is the issue. It's not the thing. It doesn't matter. It's not the person. It's not the job. It's not the house. It's none of that. It's not the job title. It's not the success. It's not the money. That itself doesn't have any, it doesn't matter. You know, it's the energy of why it's there. If we feel like we have to have it to be something, to have a status, to have any kind of value, because if we don't have it, we don't know what we're going to do. That is why we can't have it. The minute we don't need it, it doesn't matter. It's no longer a leverage point. It's no longer a poker chip that our universe can play with us anymore because it was like, whatever, take it away. I mean, I'll grieve it. Yeah, it'll bring up a lot of grief. Okay. But I'll survive. I'll make it. I'll, go on to something. I'll move on. I'll create different realities. Then it can come back in. But it comes back in a pure state. That does not mean everything we have to walk away from comes back in. I have found it's easier to start new relationships with people who want to be in the journey with you than to try to retrofit old ones. None of my old ones made it. None of them did. They all faded out over the years. Because for a while they tether you to something. When you're in that fifth dimensional consciousness and you're floating around, having people that are more grounded in, even though you really don't want to ground, we kind of want to anchor in the higher energy, not ground back out of it. So we want to anchor it in, but they do kind of tether us for a while, give us a reason to kind of have foot's kind of planted here while we're working through some of our stuff. But eventually we let those go too. But you will find for a while you're going to have people that kind of keep you anchored a little bit. They tether you to the world because we get so floaty, especially in the fifth dimensional consciousness, that we kind of need that tether. Something that kind of keeps us tethered to our human body in a sense. But then once we have learned to anchor in the energy, we don't need the tether anymore, and then that part of the relationship doesn't even serve a purpose anymore. So even if they're kind of, they move from being a tether to becoming an anchor, and now they're just weighing us down. And the conversations are boring. The relationships become boring. Everything I've had to leave behind got so frustrating at the end trying to keep it that I really didn't care when it was gone. And I see a lot of people so afraid to let it go. Let these realities go, resolve them, and move on. By the time it's really kind of the do or die, it's got to go. You really feel you're feeling that pressure, it's got to go. You really don't care anymore. When it gets to that point, it really just doesn't matter anymore. You get frustrated that you can't work with the people in the reality, and you can't bring it to higher consciousness. You can't. It's just not going to work. That's more the frustration than leaving the reality. It's what it could have been, not what it is. We want to kind of look at what it could be, because in your higher consciousness, you can see what it could be. But that's not what it is. What it is a hot mess. What we want it to be is not what it is, because everyone playing in this game is not capable of that yet. It doesn't mean they can't do it ever. It's just in this moment, they're not capable of that. They've got too much to work through. Look at all the stuff we've had to work through. And then look at someone who hasn't even started that yet. And you tell me how that's going to align when you know all the stuff they have to work through. And am I supposed to be there for that? In a living day-to-day capacity with them. Stripping away all the human reasons that say we're supposed to be there. Like, I'm married to this person. I bought a house with this person. I've been with this person for so many years. I've known this person since I was 10 years old, and we're besties. Take all that human stuff away. And does it feel like I'm supposed to stay here? Or is this just dragging me down and I'm not supposed to? But I have all this obligation energy to stay here because of all these human reasons that the soul does not care about. We really have to strip that stuff away and really look at, am I supposed to be here? And whether the pressure's coming, how you're feeling that pressure is going to be a big sign on what part of you is trying to make this work. What part of you is in this reality? What part of you is trying to keep this reality fixed? I mean, that's where we want to go. Okay, I'm going to open up the chat. Hello there. Okay, if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments and I will answer them. I think that's about as far as I can go with this for now. I think I've kind of beat it to death. I don't think there's anything else I can kind of bring in here. So if anyone has a question, I'll answer it. If not, I will sign off. And luckily, well, I'm not really luckily, but my package should not arrive in the middle of my stream. See what anything else I want to throw in here at the end. We don't ever want to judge where anybody is. And we don't want to judge where we are. We can't be judged if we don't hold judgment. If we hold judgment, then we can be judged. That's how it works. You don't feel judgment anymore once you have cleared the judgment. But we do want to observe where somebody is, not judge where someone is. And there's a big, I had a teacher once that talked about weighing the words, judgment and observation. There's a different cadence to observation. Is a higher frequency to that word. Judgment, we're looking at it and we're putting a right and wrong on it. Observation, we're just looking at it. It's not right or wrong. It's just how it is. That's not where they are. They're at a different point. They're at a different jump point than we are. That's all there is to it. It doesn't matter. Can we really look at where something is? Really look at where reality is and see, can this even be aligned? Is it any point of aligning it? Or is it just, it's just no point in it. It's just not worth doing it. No one in this really wants to be in higher consciousness. Everyone also wants to play in their human shit. And if that's not where you are, then we really have to look at what are we trying to do here. We are not the glue that's going to hold a reality together if it is completely distorted. It's just going to pull you apart trying to do that. And the whole reason of ascension is to bring everything together within inside of you, not get pulled apart again because we're trying so hard to bring everyone with us because we don't want to let any of these people or reality go because we have this obligation energy working and these programs working of why we have to stay with everybody. You're not going to be huddled up together with everybody. Ascension is pretty much a solo journey for a long time because you cannot become your own universe if you're looking at everyone else to help you decide what you're going to do, right? You just can't. It doesn't work like that. It's not supposed to work like that. So if you're in a reality and you're the only one there, after a while of trying to align them and realizing you can't, you're on the wrong track. Even if it might feel like you look out to your realities and you just see those old tumbleweeds you used to see in Westerns. That's kind of how it is for a while. And then you start to bring things in and see if they can be aligned. And if they can't, we learn after trying to align and not being able to, how to do it and how not to do it. And that's just what we learn as we go. That's why it's important to really be able to observe something and see, is this worth, I'm going to use the word saving. I don't really love that word, but is this worth trying to save this reality, or is it just me wanting to keep it? And does anyone else in reality really care? The biggest thing for me was when I closed out these realities, most people didn't care. Because you have to remember, when you're working from such a different frequency. You're applying a lot of that pressure to them, whether you're doing it consciously or not. Just your energetic presence is applying pressure to their field. It's bringing up their stuff. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. Just you being there is uncomfortable after a while. So when you leave and you stop kind of holding that bar where people need to be at to be in your world all the time, most people don't care. And that pulls us, and that brings up a lot of our stuff to clear. Because we wanted them to care. We wanted them to care more. We're no longer there. So I am going to leave it at that. So I'll see everyone next week.